really proud to be co-sponsoring this film showing with the People's Power Assembly's NYC chapter on the 50th anniversary, which was December 4th, of the assassination of a great, dynamic leader, not only in the Black liberation struggle, but the struggle against imperialism around the world. And that was Fred Hampton, who was 21 years old when he was assassinated. When I was coming around the party in Norfolk, Virginia, back in the early 1970s, the reason why I met the party is that when I was in college, I started a writing group to political prisoners. And one of the political prisoners was a Panther leader named Lance Bell, who was a member of the Chicago branch of the Black Panther Party. And this was after the assassination of Fred Hampton. And he got me in touch with Brenda Harris. Brenda Harris was also a leader of the Black Panther Party in Chicago. She was wounded during the shootout, or not the shootout, but really the slaughter that happened, at the apartment where Fred Hampton was killed. And she was wounded, her hand was mangled, and she actually came to Virginia to meet with the party, and so we struck up a relationship with her. When we were first showing the film in Norfolk, Virginia. So you'll see Brenda Harris, in the movie, but I just wanted to share that information with you. It meant a lot to me, to meet her and see her strength and courage, out of this horrendous situation. The movie was made in the midst of his assassination. They started filming in 1968-69, and during the filming was when he was assassinated. So we should keep that in mind. Another reason why Fred Hampton in particular was singled out, and you'll see it in the movie, Fred Hampton was attempting to build the first Rainbow Coalition. You'll see that, how he's trying to bring all these different anti-imperialist, anti-racist formations together. Even the Appalachian, there's an Appalachian group, not great on race, fighting racism, but, still progressive. And the outreach that he did to these groups was so dynamic. And this is another reason why the COINTELPRO, why the FBI targeted someone like him.
During the film, Fred makes a statement that he says that the Black Panther Party are armed propagandists. And it's an interesting term because it comes from Mao. And so I wanted to talk about that because I think it gets to particularly why the state decided that Fred Hampton needed to die, and why the Black Panthers themselves were a threat. So, the Black Panther Party was founded in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. Essentially, it was done for armed cop watching, just patrolling their communities and looking at keeping an eye on the police when they were interacting with Black people, but doing so armed within the open carry laws of California at the time. In 1967, the party really became nationally known and expanded because they did an armed march into the state capitol building. So that kind of changed everything. It made them hugely popular. It also convinced Republican Governor Ronald Reagan to change gun laws and get really tough on gun laws and end California's open carry. So this was before the modern version of the NRA. At that time, when the only open carry people were Black folks, NRA leadership would say there's no reason for any sportsman to walk around with a gun. There's no reason for someone to carry a high-capacity magazine. The rhetoric was very, very different when the only so-called gun nuts were Black people. But the FBI very quickly, and that's the subject of this film, the FBI very quickly caught on to the Black Panthers. They were monitoring all civil rights movements, all black liberation struggles, but what was revealed years later was that their whole campaign was about spreading disinformation, pitting Black Panthers against black gangs in California, assassination, pretty much every what's called, dirty tricks, every dirty trick in the book. And that was a major aspect of why the Black Panther Party dissolved. But getting to why this was necessary, I think we kind of look at the armed factor as a huge motivating force. It's like, they're dangerous. So that's why J. Edgar Hoover said that they're the greatest threat to national security, right? J. Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI at that time. But 10 guys with shotguns can't really overthrow the country. So it doesn't really make sense why that's what made them so dangerous. But if we look at who Huey Newton and Bobby Seale were, when they were in college, when they were in college, they both had paid jobs in youth service programs. And they were getting training as community service. And this was what inspired them to get into what they would call community survival programs. So, as the Black Panther Party started, as I said, it was essentially armed cop watching. But the first thing that they decided to do once they kind of gained momentum with that was to adopt a Serve the People program. So the most famous thing that the most famous of these programs was the Free Breakfast for Children program. So they knew that a lot of black kids were going to school without breakfast, and they knew that that was a huge problem. So they just started feeding kids themselves. And by the end of 1968, they had established 38 chapters and branches, and they had about more than 5,000 members. And so they were feeding literally thousands of children across the country. Other survival programs were clothing distribution, classes on politics and economics, free medical clinics that tested for sickle cell, drug and alcohol rehab, and even an emergency response ambulance program. So they also set up a school called the Liberation School that taught kids traditional math and science, but also got into issues of class struggle and race. And so the Black Panthers, it's important to remember that they were organizers, first and foremost. When Mao talked about an armed propagandist, what he was referring to was an armed organizer, an armed community organizer. The gun is not the offensive weapon of the armed organizer. The gun is the defensive weapon to protect against state violence, to protect against the police, or, in Mao's case, you have the Chinese nationalists. The offensive weapon is the organizational ability. It's the ability to go into a community and provide political education to people, to explain how capitalism works, how racism works, these internal contradictions, essentially to liberate people's minds and unite people and get them together and create a unified community in opposition to the ruling class. So that's what Fred and Mao meant when they said that they were armed propagandists. And that's really why Fred Hampton needed to be assassinated. So I hope you all enjoy the movie. Thank you.